5 o'clock. I will do roll call. The warden, Linda Gregory, is up on the screen, and she can hear us. And we've got Councillor George Manzer, Councillor Peter Schreier, the Director of Municipal Services, Christopher Kingston, Director of Finance, Corley Ross, myself, Matthew Ross, Deputy Warden, and the CAO, Tyler Pulley, Taylor Robinson, Executive Assistant, and we have Councillor Joan Ross. I'll ask to speak, pause to seek guidance. Then we will move into administrative and procedural items. 2.1, the approval of the agenda. Is there any additions or deletions?
I'll move the approval of the agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion carried. Is there any disclosure of conflict of interest issues this evening or anything on the agenda? All right, hearing none. I will move on to 2.3, presentation. I need a motion for Sandra Cunningham and Sarah McLaughlin from Sandy Cove Conservancy to please do this.
Motion for McLaughlin to go forward and present Sandy Cove Conservancy.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Contrary minded?
We can come on up.
Okay, you can come on up. Yes, sure.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I'll just ask, I'll ask everybody to turn the mics on. I forgot mine and the
Just
one.
hit the
Press
little
the little
button
button.
on the base there. There we go. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, thank you for inviting us so speedily. We're very appreciative of being here. And Sarah's passing around a quick description of what we will present, but we should be able to tell you what's in it. Pretty succinctly. Sarah's going to talk just a little bit about who the Conservancy is, and then she'll toss to me to talk about the specific project. So I'm Sarah McLaughlin. I'm not a singer. I always have to say that because everybody sort of looks at me like, what are you doing here? And I am the president of the Sandy Cove Conservancy, and Sandra is the treasurer. And we founded the Conservancy in 2022, largely around the idea of conservation of the beach and making sure the beach was kept clean and tidy and in good nick for everybody who comes, particularly in the summers. And the municipality has been fantastic in helping us in that initiative. You help us by putting money towards the 2 porta potties that we have down on the beach. They come seasonally. We've received one. We get one on Queen Victoria's birthday and the next one on Canada's birthday. It's very exciting. And then we expanded our idea of conservation. And so we have 3 pillars. And one is the conservation of the beaches. The other is our environment, our natural environment. The other is the conservation of our built environment, because I think you all know Sandy Cove has lots of beautiful old houses and churches, and Baptist Church in particular was falling apart. And we raised funds over the last 18 months and have restored the external part of the church. And then the other part is sort of the cultural conservation and conserving the stories of Sandy Cove, but also helping the community work together to make things happen. And so what we're presenting you today is something in that bucket of our mandate. And I'm going to throw to Sandra, who will explain how this came about.
So because we're not busy enough, we like to take on other things. And we, a group of 5 of us from the Conservancy were invited to participate. We applied and we were invited to participate in a course put on by the Cody Institute at St. FX and the Grossmorn Institute of Tourism in Newfoundland. And it's around community development. And they have they're promoting a model called asset-based community development, which we call developing communities from within. So looking at where your strengths are, before going outside. So we did an 8-month course, which culminated in a few days in Newfoundland with lots of exercises. And then we're plopped back home and we think, okay, well, how do we, now it's just us in this little village. We were by far the smallest community invited from around the Maritimes. There was one community stretched from Lunenburg to Yarmouth on the South Shore. 6 different communities. There was another at PEI, there's another 3 communities out of New Brunswick, and then there's us little old Sandycove on the beautiful Digby Neck. And what we decided to do is, there was a lot of curiosity because we're a tight-knit community, so we decided to hold a meeting over the Christmas break when a lot of people come home and then everybody who's local is there, and wanted to share what we had learned about community development, and that involved a few exercises. One of which is mapping your community in a way that's illustrative and has to do with history and culture, and it's not your typical geography map. Another we came up with was, well, let's name all the various organizations and associations and activities that we all get up to in our village and map it on a big, wall map. And another was sort of a directory of skill sets. What are all the talents that are locally? And we combined all of these and thought, okay, we need to do something quickly that shows that let's move us forward. And so we thought, well, that associations one was kind of interesting because we found that there's a lot of overlap, but in a small village like Sandycove, there were at least 12 or 13 formal organizations doing things. And we thought, well, that's something to look at. So we called a meeting of representatives in February of somebody from each of these organizations, which included everything from the garden club to Cove Music to the fire hall, the volunteer fire department, 3 churches, our Sandycove Conservancy. So we got about 12 groups together and basically brainstormed about, well, is there something, we know we're all very active, but are we duplicating? Is there a way we could communicate better? We don't always know what each other are doing. How could we improve this? And, we've always had a little bulletin board in the center of town that gets very crowded with all the flyers. And then we said, there's something really wonderful about that bulletin board, but maybe we need to move it digitally so that people from further away who are visiting or, we can actually do something and then not duplicate so we said, as the Conservancy, we don't mind taking a lead on this just to say, is this something that's interesting? And that created, it was a real consensus. And so we created a first committee in Sandycove that's been all men, I have to say. Mostly it's women doing all these things. We called them the Tech Bros, and they were our working group to try and come up with, well, what would this look like? Is it a website? Is it just another digital platform? Is it a WhatsApp group? Like, how do we want to do this? And we have some pretty savvy guys in our town, actually, and they got really excited about it. And they recently, and this is why we didn't make your April 1st deadline for a community fund, because we didn't know what we had at that point. But we do now, or we're starting to, and they've come up with the idea of a website, and the pilot project is to do a community calendar, with the idea that that can become a broader website that can have an archive and storytelling the history of the village, trails to walk on, an online store for local artisans, and it can serve a purpose beyond Sandycove and be a bit of a pilot project that could be taken up by other communities as well, and can be linked to other things. So for the community calendar, we got all of the various organizations to submit to us, okay, for these guys doing a template, show us what you've got going. So we have a few of these, and I think the document that Sarah pointed out, this is just their first. This isn't what it's necessarily going to look at, but it's the first draft that they've come back with because this is pre-designer. But we think it's already looking like something that we're going to be excited to share with the wider group. So our next step is to register all of this, get the actual plugins and the hosting ready. Take this, we've talked to a local designer. The other thing we'd like to do is we want to involve members of the community, and so in a way it's already been successful, this project, because it's gotten 12 disparate groups of people already talking and working together on something. And we decided that for we wanted the work to be carved out locally. And there's a young woman who lives in Sandy Cove who is a graphic designer, Zoe Marshall, and she got very interested. And so she's currently designing some of the Sandy Cove Sentinel, the look of the website, and we'd like to pay her. It's okay for the rest of us to be volunteer, but she's 25 and getting married this year, and it's important that we pay her. So she's going to present something probably later this week, and we can start, and then we'll take it back to the group of 13 organizations with the idea of going live with the calendar end of May. And we want to run that through the season of October, sort of May to October, and at that point move into phase 2. So that's what we're here to talk to you about. We're quite excited about it, and we've filled out an application which I sent very late earlier today to Taylor, I think, and basically our budget for this round, for this phase, is $5,000, of which $2,000 is being contributed in kind for the development. We're looking at another $1,000 which the Conservancy is going to put up, and then we're looking for $2,000 hopefully from the municipality as a contribution, and that is to cover the hard costs, the graphic design costs. We want to be able to hire a webmaster at some point at $150 an hour to actually manage it. We'll do the first month or so ourselves, I think, but then we want to be able to hire someone locally. So that's, in a nutshell, that's what we're here to talk to you about. Did I miss something?
You missed nothing. And I think you came in under 10. I think that what Sandra referenced, which I think is perhaps the most interesting aspect for the municipality, is that we're starting very specifically with Sandy Cove, but we can see possibilities for if Bear River wants to have it, or sort of Little River or East Ferry, or going down the neck if they want to have a page within this website that is going to be built with that kind of expandability. Because we know, we're just one community on the neck, but we're a pretty active community, so we wanted to.
And we thought we should start with what we know, and then others can bring us what they know. We thought it would be presumptuous of us to assume we know what other communities want for themselves. But I did notice when we were doing the research on web design, there's a really great Digby tourism, I have to say. The Digby.ca tourism site is really intuitive and works very well. And one thing we noticed in going through that, they've got a page for Digby Neck and Islands, and there's virtually nothing until you get to Balancing Rock as a tourism. So you've got this entire Digby Neck that we know has lots of things to discover. So while this is a project that we think is starting from within, the talents within the community, we think there's lots that can be interesting for visitors and for people from the surrounding area. And we will think about their activities. Some things like perhaps the rug hooking at the library is something that's very local for a group that likes to do that, or our exercise yoga. But there's also, we invite Nova Scotia authors to come and speak. We have, there's a community market twice a summer that has a large reach now that's going to take place at the fire hall. Those, now that we've got those digitally and not just a flyer on the board, it's easy for us to link that to the Digby.ca tourism site and have that come up under Digby Neck and Islands. So we see a synergy with what is already being done by Digby County in that.
Any questions?
I just have one. Going forward, what's in place for sustainability of the website and that sort of thing? It's one thing to set it up.
We're very aware of that. Yes. That's why we have budgeted for a webmaster, for somebody who would always be monitoring it and to accepting things into it. Right now we're talking about, can the associations just upload anytime, as people might do on Facebook? We think that's probably problematic. We'll need somebody who can be an editor and say, okay, yeah, I'll pull this, I'll pull that. So we're very fully aware that you can't just make a piece of digital and let it become junk on the internet, right? So it has to be active.
And as we expand it, we see the possibility of, well, first of all, the Conservancy is taking the lead right now and coming up with some of the funds. and doing that. But there are lots of organizations, and lots. So going forward, if people see a value in it, there might be some form of subscription fee that on an annual basis for every organization that's posting there. We could see there being, if we move into the directory of services area, which is still not yet evolved out of our group activity, to be able to hire locally, there could be, you pay something to put your business card up on the site, things like that going forward. We're not looking to become a super advertising commercial site at this point, but we see there are revenue ways to sustain it.
All right, anything on the board? Or go ahead, Peter.
Yeah. Well, I'm curious about the features of this website. So initially, that's a calendar, right?
Right.
So basically, it's you're listing the events that are upcoming, which is great.
There is that when you push on an event, hopefully each organization will have a backgrounder. So when something is organized by the Conservancy or by the Garden Club or whatever, you can get more information about each of those organizations on the site.
Right. Do you have any hypothesis about how this could evolve in the future? It starts, so the feature you wanted to focus on now
with the calendar, because
right?
that came out of that community exercise. Yeah.
Probably like what brings the most value with the least effort. Like it's kind of the low-hanging fruit, right? What's next? If that pans out like that works.
It depends who you talk to. We have an incoming director for the Conservancy who, in fact, would be here tonight if he weren't working. But Jean-François Yvon is kind of the project manager on this, and he's been fielding a lot of requests from people. And there's a lot of interest in an online store, a donation fundraising capacity for various organizations. For instance, the Baptist Church is undergoing a phase 2 survey at the moment for what that building could house or be for the community and for the at large. And so there are fundraisers. There's also, for instance, the Conservancy has invited the Nova Scotia Hiking Summit that's coming to Digby. They're going to come and do a walk in Sandy Cove because we're installing benches around the village at historic sites, and then we're going to take them through a path, and they've agreed to come on October 4th. So these kinds of events that go to a wider group, we hope will bring more people to our site.
I think the other aspect of the site would also be to have some archive. 100 years ago, I mean, probably only 30, but Arthur Bull and a bunch of people from up and down Digby Neck formed a kind of collective, and they created a website which now sits in Library and Archives Canada. So pulling those Sandy Cove stories that they were able to collect into our website would be something that we would want to do.
Right.
And even create an oral storytelling project. I mean, there's no lack of ways in which we can expand it. It's just a question of.
There's a project, but some of the elders in town are worried that the history is going to get lost. And so there's several ideas about all the history. There's already a fairly good start to this that I think Rob Hersey and a group did at the Heritage site in the Municipality of all the history of the old houses and the sea captains. And we would like to work on that in our mapping exercise too, and start to have those stories from each of the places and what life was like.
It's interesting what you're mentioning about the idea of an online store. When multiple people start coming up with the same idea at the same time, it's because it's an idea was starting to sell. And that's the third time I hear someone proposing an online store for this area. I'll make sure I connect you all. So you guys
Perfect. Yeah.
I think there's a lot of potential there.
Well, and because we are, as Sarah has said, we are starting very specifically with Sandy Cove, but then even on the calendar, we've had the conversation of, well, we have a couple of residents who are very good musicians who are quite involved in the Tivertonian, so shouldn't we be, or in the Fundy Chorale in Digby, or the Fog that plays all over Nova Scotia. So we may introduce as part of this first phase a tab that's Sandy Covers, what are they doing elsewhere, or other points of interest that people, so like a bulletin board that you can have as a digital bulletin board for other things of interest that people want to participate in. But as I said, for us, the success is also about getting the community, which has always been a diverse community of people that are seasonal, people that are fishermen, people that are, part-time, full-time, young and old, and it's nice to see something that brings everybody together with one goal.
If there aren't any other questions, thank you very much for coming this evening.
Thank you for seeing us.
Don't make any decisions on the same night, but we will.
Didn't expect that, but thank you very much.
Thank you for hearing us out.
Appreciate it, Hannah. Thank you.
Have a good evening.
You can stay if you like. Watch the rest of the meeting.
Look at the agenda. Oh, the Temptations.
Yeah.
Peter's Island Lighthouse, that's kind of fun. Use grant policy. Can we take this?
Yeah, sure.
Excellent. Bye-bye, thank you.
Thank you. All right, next is 2.4, approval of the minutes of April 14th, 2026.
I'll move the approval of the minutes of April 14th, 2026.
Seconder? Any questions on this minutes? All in favor? Aye. Contrary minded, the motion carried. Next is the CAO report. We have council on May 19th at 5 o'clock, that's next week. May 26th, there is no meeting. On June the 2nd at 5 p.m., we will have bylaw and policy. On June the 9th at 5 p.m., we'll have committee of the whole. June 16th, there will be no meeting. June 23rd, we will have council at 5 p.m. June 30th, there is no meeting. July 7th, there is no meeting. July 14th, there is no meeting. July 21st, 5 p.m., we will have an audit committee. And on July 28th at 5 p.m., we will have council. The next is the CAO update. Is there any questions for the CAO?
I do have one regarding the negotiations with Queens for our landfill project. So currently, what we're doing is we're using a landfill in Queens for our the waste that goes on the transfer station here.
One stream, so not recycling or compost, but the solid waste stream that goes to. We've had a contract with Queens for 25 years, and it's finally due its end. So we have an option to renew it by this October. If not, it expires in March 2027. So we're in talks. It's the CAO of the town of York and I are in talks with the CAO of Queens. There are very initial talks at this stage. We obviously expect the costs to increase, but we don't have any numbers at this point.
And do we have any alternatives if that contract doesn't work for us?
We do. It's the closest landfill that works for us. There is one up the valley that's a little farther away. So we have at least one viable alternative. It may impact costs, but if this negotiation breaks down or we're not satisfied with the results, we have to go to tender or look for other things.
Peter, could you please speak up? I can't hear you.
It doesn't catch on the microphone.
No, I'm not hearing. I'm just hearing a low whisper.
Yeah. So my thought was, have we ever considered in that stream of eco-friendly projects dealing in we had the biogas generator and things like that. Have we ever considered incineration of waste?
So our municipality hasn't. I'm not sure if the other units that are involved in Waste Check Act, this is a group contract and a group negotiation. I know that the town of Yarmouth, I think, is active in exploring options. And if council wanted us to look at that, we'd probably direct Waste Check to look into it if we wanted to see what those opportunities were, if they exist.
Yeah, I think it would be an interesting conversation to have for. Looks like there's an opening for that discussion. I have seen it's really not the same situation. Remember, I once went to Singapore and I had a chat with what they call the URA, it's a urban redevelopment agency. It's a very powerful ministry up there, city state there. Because they have very limited space, so they have to find smart ways to deal with waste and things like that. So what they're doing currently is they incinerate all the waste, turn that into energy, and the ashes, the ashes that come from it, they're using land reclamation projects, so they expand into the sea and they fuel up that space with the ash that they generate from these facilities. It's really not our problem, right? We don't have a lack of space here, but I think we're highly dependent on the quality of the water that comes from our what do you call this? The underground water. Yeah,
The aquifer?
Sorry.
I said, do you mean the aquifer?
The aquifers, yeah. And landfills are a big threat to this. So I think it would be worth thinking about that in the very long term.
We might want to still Linda and Joan around waste check, and Chris attends the meeting as well. Perhaps this is something that one of them can bring up next waste check meeting and talk to us maybe to see if it's ever been explored, what our options might be.
All right, next is the department reports. Are there any questions on those? The municipal airports, trails.
I thought the trails was very well done. She's been doing a lot of work.
Mm-hmm.
So it's, actually all the reports were good, but I really enjoyed Candace's system.
It's all good to me. Can I get a motion to approve the reports?
So move.
Seconder?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion carried. The next is dangerous and unsightly. We have a dangerous and unsightly premises report.
Yeah. This is just a brief overview of our current status. The dangerous and unsightly administrator is working on the paperwork for demolition in 3 locations, one Conway, one Centerville, and one Weymouth. She's working on a partial demolition of a vacant dwelling in the Sandy Cove area. The older section of the dwelling is beyond repair, but the other section is salvageable. And she's working on 2 cleanup properties in Weymouth and Ashmore. She's working closely with the landowners to remediate the site.
Next, we'll move into business items. 4.1 is the operating budget, draft number 2.
All right, so you guys heard the long drawn out spiel last week. There has been a few changes that needed to be made in the interim. So with our revenues, we needed, I guess, due to the discussion we had at the last meeting and the talk about the wind turbines, we had kind of kicked into gear and trying to get a plan as far as costs and things like that go. So I did update the budget with those numbers. With the possibility of the wind turbine being decommissioned this year, we did change the budget by $100,000 because the revenue would obviously not be there once those come down. We have the transfer from our lighthouse reserve. So that one I've changed. There was 2 things that happened here. Briar Island has decided that they're not going to move forward with their project this year. I think that group is going to be too busy with Peters Island. And then Peters Island ended up needing a little bit extra funding because one of their applications that they had put in for a grant didn't come through. So they ended up asking us for $3,750. So the total difference in that account is $2,250. Then we move on to our expenses. Our operating grants to the fire departments, that changed slightly only because that's 5% of our revenues. So because we had changed our revenues, those fluctuate up and down. Fire protection, this one actually I prematurely changed. This will be up for discussion later on the council agenda. So I think we can maybe just talk about that when that one comes up. If you guys decide to go forward with what's being presented, that's what the change will be. If not, I'll just revert that back. EOC supplies and equipment, I didn't make a huge change to that one, but we did, inside of this budget, we had built in a cost to fill up our new generator. And once we actually have got the bill for that, and it was higher than expected due to the price of fuel, even though we tried to budget high, but obviously not quite high enough, so we adjusted that just because we do know what's that cost at this point. So our EMO programs, you'll see that we didn't have anything budgeted there. We added $75,000 in there for the water program that we discussed at the last meeting. Then we have the town lift station cost share. In the last draft, I had put $163,963. This would have been a figure that was given to us by the town for multiple projects. Basically, we're a year behind, so these would be projects that they projected for last year. Once I got the final figure from them, we ended up only having to have an $88,000 bill instead of $163,000. So with that one, there was 2 projects that didn't get done that will roll over into the following year. That did save us $75,000 there. Public drop-off expenses, I adjusted that slightly just by $4,000. This one was because we had a few bills come in late into the new year that were for last year. And looking at that and based on the actuals, I felt like we might not have budgeted quite enough there. Renewable energy development project. So this one had 0 budgeted, but we added in the addition of the climate change mitigation and adaptation plan. So that's what that's going to cost us this year. I believe that's a 2-year project.
And just to be clear on that one, so that one's not actually going to cost us money. We just have to pay a small portion up front. So that's the $75,000 grant. So the grant will reimburse us the whole cost. It's just the company needed some money up front. So that's that one.
And the grant will come in our next fiscal. That's why.
So is that project done by our staff or is it from somebody from outside?
It's a consultant.
That's when we would have talked about, what was it, a month and a half ago? Yeah. And then we have our wind turbine operational costs. This is one I think that we can probably discuss a little bit later. You are going to get an update as far as the decommissioning goes. And then the Briar Island, this is just the expense side of what I mentioned earlier. So we went from $6,000 for them to 0. And then Peters Island, you see the additional $3,750 on the expense side. So as of right now, that's all that we have for changes. There is one thing that came to light today. I had been speaking to our fire coordinator, and in draft 1, so this didn't hit this package, but I wanted to bring it up to you because next week we are hoping to finalize the budget, and you'll see that in the next draft. So he had applied for a grant for $45,500. That was included in draft 1 and in draft 2, but he had advised me today that that money is actually going to belong to the Fire Association and that his grant was actually filled out in their name, not municipality. So I backtracked that out of the budget. And like I said, you'll see that in the next package, but I did want to bring it up so it wasn't a surprise next week. It's not really our money. It will all go towards the Fire Association. We will track it. It has come into us, but it will all flow through the Fire Association and on their books, and we'll reimburse them as the expenses come in. Any questions? Oh, and then I guess I should mention there at the bottom, just to make all of these changes, we did have to change our capital reserves by $527,086, and that was a decrease to what we would have been putting aside for the future. Any questions?
Good. All right, next is 4.2 Peters Island Lighthouse.
Okay, so on this one, our Heritage Advisory Committee members, feel free to speak on this one, but according to Rob, the siding they want to put on Peters Island wouldn't be something that would typically fall in line with heritage requirements, but they have a cheaper option that will last longer. My understanding is that the COTW committee is in favor of this, so the community supports it. He brought in to show me if it seems functional and like it would do the job. But he says that the Heritage Advisory Committee needs a motion from council to approve the use of this. The planking they want to use here.
I'll move that the Heritage Advisory Committee recommend, I'll move, that the, hardy plank cladding can be applied to Peters Island Lighthouse, and that's rather than painting it, because paint doesn't hold up. The reason is because of special environmental conditions experienced on the island, the high humidity, and bird feces, which create fungal growth, have been too harsh for the traditional wood products to be sustainable.
Seconded. Wilson. Any questions? All approved. Say aye.
Council?
Approved to take it to council.
You guys vote?
Motion to approve.
Aye.
Aye. Contrary minded. Motion carried. Sounds good to me.
The only question actually that came up over that when we were looking at it was how well it would hold up in the wet weather. And Rob pointed out that that's exactly what's on this building.
Okay.
This is the thing which seems to have held up fine.
Right. Next, 4.3 is the youth grants policy.
Okay, so the reason I put this on the agenda and I attached the policy is because our deputy warden attended a youth event a few weeks back, and after that event, he wanted us to promote this youth grants policy because it's not very well used, and we end up giving the $3,000 at the end of the year to DART for their program. So we advertised it, and we received 3 applications from the Island Consolidated School, 3 different groups. So the issue is, and it's the same issue, ironically, that I had back in 2021, but clearly I didn't solve well enough. So back in 2021, we received a request from a couple students at the Digby High School that I felt should have fallen under this policy, but it didn't. So in 2021, we made a few revisions to allow that. But now we have a couple of requests that if council wants to approve money for this sort of thing, we're going to have to change the policy again. So really, it's just your opinion on that. So we'll start with if we look at the policy, it's essentially the purpose is the issue here. So it says to establish guidelines and procedures for the sponsorship of student participation in student learning or travel programs conducted outside of the province of Nova Scotia, the sponsorship of students attending provincial or national competitions, the sponsorship of hosting and or delivery of national provincial events within or in close proximity to the municipality. So the first request we got that I think likely falls under this policy is just from a student at Island Consolidated School, Kennedy LeBeau. She wants to attend the N.S.A. conference. I don't know if George and some of you are familiar with that. It's essentially like a student leadership conference that is located in different schools throughout the province each year.
Yeah.
And she's just asking for money to help with fees and travel for that. The 2 that I question whether they fall under here, and I'm thinking council might want them to, and if so, we'd have to change the policy. There's a request from the senior girls volleyball at Islands Consolidated, and their request is essentially to buy volleyball equipment. They want to start up their program, they want to be able to have some money towards the equipment. And then we have another one from the Island Consolidated School, the basketball team. They are hosting an event that's just Digby Weymouth teams, and they're looking for money for food and snacks and drinks for this event. So I would argue that neither one of those fall under the purpose, like the 3 that we just went over that are on the screen there. And the question is, do we want to be able to approve things like these last 2 or not? Because if not, we just reject them because they don't fall under our policy. If we want to, we should change our policy.
The second one, actually, she could be going to DART for the equipment. That's where that can come from. I think if they're requesting food for a tournament, I don't think it should be under the youth program. I just think it's a request out of our regular grant money. That's my opinion.
Go ahead, Joe.
No, that was the same thing, just saying the second one should go there.
So does anybody think either of these should fall under youth grants?
The first one just under youth
Other than
grants. The second one, no. Anything sports. That's why we changed it, because if you put it to sports, that money will be gone. People will be wanting it for to sign their kid up to hockey, or hockey gear, like,
It's only $3,000.
it's only $3,000. We wanted for youth to do educational things for it. It's gonna be separate.
Yeah, there's only one thing that now that we.
The rest has to go to Darrell.
It looks like there's no scope for international travel. Maybe we should include that, extend everything to, I don't know, from the state of Massachusetts.
I mean, it says conducted outside of the province of Nova Scotia. We try to kind of use
Yeah.
that and include it.
Yeah.
So the next question then is, there's no dollar amount in the letter from the student that's going to this NSSA provincial conference, but the maximum we're allowed to give is up to $250 for an individual student. So I would need a motion to give Kennedy LaVolt whatever amount of money you choose towards this.
I so move that we give 250 to the student.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded, motion carried. And I think we have to keep that in there too, or you're going to get people, grade 12 students want the whole 3,000 to go to Spain or whatever, right? 250 is fair. And then again, we do have a policy in there at the end. It will go to our sports stuff with DART. Again, that's where those policies should be directed, because if it doesn't get used, it does end up over at DART, and they can go there for. Alrighty, so next is the water assistance, 4.4.
Okay, so the water systems. So Chris will have a little more detail on this because I hadn't been looking into it. As you guys know, last week we talked about doing some kind of voucher program again, such as bottled water, some distribution program, budgeting some amount of money to help residents with the drought this summer. Chris will give details. We think there's issues with the distribution portion. Clearly, we can do the bottling program again. The province does not intend to fund it, but we would fund that ourselves. But I'll let Chris talk about the distribution.
So I did some initial research on potential avenues for the water distribution. We talked about reimbursing some haulers. Some initial concerns that I flagged were the only companies who would be insured and would be able to provide legitimate like receipts and proof of purchase would be those bigger companies such as Cullen Water, et cetera. A lot of the local guys with the tanks on the back of their truck, although they're doing good service, it just it would be a logistical and administrative nightmare on our end to be able to prove from an audit side of things that those individuals are actually doing the work and working or reimbursing them for said work. So if that was an avenue that we wanted to pursue, it would have to be through the larger companies such as Cullen Water, et cetera, who don't really do local resident drop-offs. They do the big drop-offs. We had some initial conversations about Argyle had done public works, had distributed water. We feel that our public works department is too small to be able to handle that, and again, a logistical administrative nightmare to organize such things. That's, I guess, really all I mean.
So essentially what we're looking at is like you saw in the budget, we want to budget 75,000. Worst case scenario, we're using it for the water bottle voucher program, and we start it like July 1st or in June, so people can use it during the actual drought this year. In the meantime, we're also, as you know, open to water filling stations, so we thought we would look, that's on the capital side. We would spend the next few months looking into that. There's some other municipalities looking into it as well. There was a recent article on it in CBC, Middlebridge. So we're hoping maybe we have a voucher program. Maybe one day we have a water filling station that replaces the voucher program. And if it works well, we have it in different areas. So we're open to exploring lots of options. But in the meantime, we think at minimum we can have some sort of voucher program.
So what's the challenge in certifying the smaller amounts? What really is the problem? It's like we have to watch them.
And from my perspective, Peter, before he answers that, it's the liability concern too. If they don't have the proper insurance, contamination issues, it's just hard when the amount of logistics being set up properly.
You know, the audit is actually more of our concern. At the end of the fiscal year, we have to prove that all those reimbursements we gave those individual water bottlers are legitimate. And and then it falls on them to be able to provide us consistent and valid proof from not only themselves but the homeowners that they delivered said water.
These are not paperwork type.
Yeah.
They're very informal, right?
Yeah.
Can we explore perhaps giving, so you have the bigger water haulers, right? I guess they come with a like a big water tank and they deliver all that in one spot, right? What if they fill 1,000 liter what do you call it again?
The tote?
IBC totes, yeah. And then these guys, instead of handling water, they just handle the totes, and they are delivery guys. They're not water guys. Right? They just do the logistics of it, just the drop off. So we could have I don't know, maybe the airport would be a space where you have a surface there where you have some totes lined up. The tank comes in, fill up the totes, and then the guys come there, grab them, deliver wherever. What I'm thinking is that some people have trouble coming here to get the vouchers, right? Because you have to, let's say you live in remote part like Westport or so you have to drive all the way here to the municipality, grab a voucher, and then grab water, and come back.
We could set up because they have access to the water because of the local source. Like we had good uptake from the source, including Digby Neck, but we could set up a mail program. Like if you were on the islands or somewhere and you said you could not, it wasn't possible for you to come in. It's just the same. I mean, on our end, it's not a big issue. I don't know if that would solve your issue, but we could do that. And we're mailing them out a couple weeks at a time. We did. Okay, well, there we go. We know some lessons.
We mail them by chemicals.
Yeah. Assuming they don't want to short this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Any other questions? Next, we'll move on to 4.5, Canadian Volunteer Fire Service Association Awards.
So on this one, they're essentially looking for us to pay for and provide medals at an earlier start date for the reasons they outlined. I talked to Bruce, and my understanding is that the fire departments would be responsible for the paperwork and actually applying for these awards. Bruce would review it for them. But then we would be responsible for only the medals. So as you will see, Corley noted in the budget, I think we budgeted an extra $3,000, assuming you guys may want to do this. We don't really know what the uptake will be in year one, but it's just a matter of wanting to spend the extra cost on some more medals.
When will you start with the medals? 5 years? 10
I think
years?
it says there, I think it's 10 years.
10 years, yeah.
Starting in 10 years.
Can I?
Go ahead, Linda.
I personally think this is a great idea. I mean, anyone who puts in at least 10 years, especially in the firefighting, they deserve. And I know other counties have done this in municipalities, but they have started at the 10-year. So I personally am for this.
I think if you're gonna keep the firefighters, the program's gonna help retain anything to.
I think maybe just if you guys are in favor, just a motion to send a letter letting the letter writer know our decision. We've already included it in the budget. Motion for the
I shall move that we send a letter that we agree with the doing the medals. For the firefighters 10 years ago.
I will second that.
So, question, does that entail any work on or expense on our part?
The cost of the medals.
Medals.
Which we were already doing, it's just now it will be after 10 years. It's more medals. If you start at 10 years rather than 30, it's just a lot.
Yeah, because when I read this, I said, well, we could actually be giving one every 5 years, right? Because it's something that is achievable, right? If you join the volunteer service and then your first medal is 10 years from now, you're not really changing that medal. But if it's 5 years from now, I think you get more of the retention effect. And if we did, 5, 10, 15, 20, maybe by the end of the service, you end with 4 medals, which is kind of cool, right?
I do not want to change my motion because that is what the firefighters have asked for, is 10 years enough, and that's what the other municipalities are doing.
Yeah, no, I'm not,
You can defeat my motion, but I'm just saying, I do not want to change it.
yeah, no, I'm not gonna motion if we do anything different, I'm just, while discussing the current motion, I'm just thinking either, if that's something that we would like to explore.
It's the environment we're in. A few years back, we changed our service recognition for our staff to 5 years because nowadays, 5 years is a long time for some people. It's not like you don't just start somewhere and spend 30 years there anymore. It's extremely rare. So I'm with you. Yeah, I agree with what you're doing. This is what they're asking for.
Yeah.
Do I have a second? Okay. Joe second. All in favor? Aye. Contrary minded? Motion carried. We have correspondence and information. We have a letter of support for Antigonish Coalition to End Poverty. See that. And there are letters here from the town of Lockport with their 5-year freeze for Nova Scotia power rates. A letter from Shelburne, Northern Premiers, also expressing their they want to put a rate freeze on Nova Scotia Power. We sent ours in already. 5.4 is a 12-month notice letter to NSFM 2027-2028.
And when I tell you things like we don't know what our expenses will be next year, this is the kind of stuff I'm talking about. Here's that letter. Here's the 10 ways we might increase our expenses.
Yeah. There's a lot of stuff there, yeah. No. Pay more for the rent. You could be. Any questions on that? All right, we'll go into the committee reports. We'll start, Warden Linda Gregory.
Yes?
Go ahead.
What, my committees, there is the minutes to each one there. I have, right now I'm at the, conference for, waste, in, Whistler. The, what else I want to say? Dark you speak about.
Yeah, I got
the King's Transit, you've seen that coming out. We will be putting up the new name and the new everything for the riders. That will be coming out in June. And the next meeting for the Biosphere Reserve is going to be, I believe, in Liverpool, and that will be the AGM, and it will be in person. Does anyone have any questions?
Nope.
Okay.
All right, Peter, you want to go next?
Yeah, so again, in this latest period, there was no community activity. The next, the upcoming one is the Crownland Stakeholder Interaction Meeting. It's meeting in a couple weeks now.
George?
My first one was Heritage Advisory Committee, which I wasn't able to make. Joan, I think, was there, so she can bring it up to them on that. And Clyde Terrace didn't have an April meeting. This one. And that's it.
We're good.
The water source doesn't matter. Heritage Advisory Committee, we met April 22nd. One of the items on the agenda was the alternative planning options for Peters Island Lighthouse, and we decided on the Hardin Plank platting. This past year, the municipal church grant program delivered $41,000 so far to the municipal heritage registered churches in the district. 14 churches are eligible and 12 have participated. There are 2 that have not yet submitted. Little River, which apparently didn't submit in the last program either, and Centerville. Program is capped at $5,000 per church. Planning Advisory Committee hasn't met yet this term. Marketing Levy Committee next meeting is June 10th. Digby Area Housing next meeting is July 7th. Waste check, we meet monthly as needed. So the first part of the last meeting was the AGM annual report was actually circulated. We discussed flyer services, and some areas have bylaws guiding what that service looks like. At the meeting, we asked that a template letter circulate to each of the groups on flyer services as well as on Sharp's disposal. A Sharp's letter was to be sent to Minister Coleman, the Environment and Climate Change Minister, and to Minister Thompson for Health and Wellness, expressing concern about the lack of action during the Sharp's disposals in the province. We reviewed some of the policy revisions, and our next meeting is set for September 8th. Digby Area Tourism, their AGM is scheduled for May 14th. I did attend the Tourism Association Strategic Planning presentation on May 7th, and the 6 key partners for implementation of their 5-year plan are basically marketing organizations, all levels of government, transportation providers, Micmac communities, cultural organizations, and industrial and education institutions. Last year, just as a note, in Nova Scotia, there was $3.7 billion in revenue brought in as a result of tourism, and 55,000 jobs were supported.
Tourism is big. Right. Had a REMO meeting. REMO coordinator Bruce Snell is still working on the possibility of a municipal water fill station in Weymouth. He also presented us with the learnable software that the town of Digby already uses. Both Digby and Fair Municipalities will be taking this back to council to review something we want to sign up to. Bruce also updated us on ANC meetings and introduced us to the Municipal Wildfire Communication Readiness Checklist. Joint RCMP Advisory Committee, Sergeant Grant Ryland updated us on the status of his department. He was proud to say that the Digby Department has been the busiest department in Nova Scotia for dealing with drug raids. The detachment was also granted a drone for this area that will be used to search and rescues and other investigations. Attended the audit committee. The municipality met with them, Brian Thornton, and our community reps to go over yearly upcoming audit. Aaron Kelly did his presentation, and everyone was satisfied with the municipal appointments to date. The Digby Port Authority did meet. I had some of the reps. And that was all for me this one. Saying that, we've done our committee reports. We'll go to the audience. Do you have any questions on tonight's meeting?
No, not at all.
All right. Well, thank you for attending. We do have to go into camera for 2 contractuals and a legal, so I appreciate you for coming, and have a good evening. You as well.